So, this is 8-3, the second part. What we're going to talk about in 8-3, the second part, is the 30-60-90 right triangle. We talked about the 45-45-90 right triangle yesterday. Its patterns are right here. Okay, and like I told you yesterday, my geometry and pre-calc and Algebra 2 teachers told me that the sides of a 45-45-90 right triangle are as easy as 1 square root of 2. Okay, a 30-60-90 right triangle is as easy as 1 square root of 3. But the problem is that the square root of 3 is smaller than 2, and the side lengths have to have the same relationship as the angles they're across from. Okay, so if 1, 2, and square root of 3 are my scalars, my constant multiples, they all depend on the shorter length, first of all. Okay, and that's always across from the 30-degree angle. That's why that one's called 1. All right, that's like the capstone of the problems. It's the cornerstone. All right, so the 30-degree angle, you always want to find the side across from the 30-degree angle first. That one is highest priority. If you're not given the shortest leg, you want to find the shortest leg. Okay, so let's start working through these a little bit. First of all, the hypotenuse, h, is always going to be 2 times the short leg. H is always equal to 2 times the short leg. The long leg is always going to be equal to square root of 3 times the short leg. Like I said, the short leg is the cornerstone of your problem because both of the other ones depend on that length. Okay? So, if I'm going to summarize this like I summarized it for you yesterday, a 30-60-90 right triangle, if you're given the short leg and you want to come up with the hypotenuse, you will multiply by 2. Okay? If you're given the hypotenuse and you want to come up with the short leg, kind of reverse that. All right, you switch which one you're given. What will you do to come up with the short leg if you're given the hypotenuse? Anybody? Divide by 2. Very good. Okay, divide by 2 because you're going to reverse what you just did. Okay, if you're given the short leg and you're trying to find the long leg, you will multiply by the square root of 3. And if you're given the long leg and you want to find the short leg, what will you do? Divide by square root of 3. Very good. Okay. Always find the shorter leg first because that one is the cornerstone of your problem. Always find the shorter leg first. And keep in mind that that's the one across from the 30 degrees. Does that make sense? You always want to find that one first. All right, we're going to do some examples. I'm leaving the patterns up here on this side of the board. They're not going away, all right? They're going to stay there for right now. But again, if you don't write anything else down for your notes, you'll probably want these formulas written down so that you can use them on your quiz on Wednesday, okay? All right, I'm going to scroll down. Always find the shorter leg first. So here we go. So one of the main questions I'm going to ask you is, are we given the short leg? And if not, we're going to need to find that first. All right. Here we go. We're given 1 right there. What is the 1 representing? Is it the shorter leg, the longer leg, or the hypotenuse? Jamie. It's the shorter leg. How'd you know that?
Because it's across the 30 degrees.
Bless you. It's across from the 30-degree angle. So that's the short leg. Also, it looks like it's the shortest leg. These will look like they are, if they're drawn to scale, you'll actually be able to tell what the short leg is and what the long leg is. Okay, remember the legs always form the right angle. All right, so we're asked to find x, or find y and x. Y is going to be the long leg, okay, and x is going to be the hypotenuse, if you're going to identify that. All right, so we're given the short leg. We want to find the hypotenuse and the long leg. What do you want to find first, the hypotenuse or the long leg? Hypotenuse, okay, so to find the hypotenuse, what am I going to do given the short leg? Multiply by 2. Very good. So you're going to take 1 and multiply by 2 to get h. 1 times 2 is 2. All right, so 2 is, I should have put x here because x is the hypotenuse in our picture. So we just found what x equals. Now let's find what y equals. All right, so we have, again, the short leg. I want to find the long leg, which is y. Okay, how do I find the long leg if I'm given the short leg? Multiply by square root of 3. Okay, so I'm going to take 1, which is my short leg, and multiply by the square root of 3. Well, that's just square root of 3, and that's equal to y.
Can you do something?
You could plug it into a calculator and get 1.732 if you want, but it's not a nice number, and it goes on forever. Okay, so it's irrational. All right. Here, we're given 9. All right. Oh, let's see. Tim, is 9 the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse?
Short leg.
The short leg. So this is SL. All right. I'm given the short leg, and I need to find the long leg and the hypotenuse. The long leg is going to be Y. And the hypotenuse is going to be x. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the one across from the right angle. Okay, most of you know that.
I know.
So, to find, let's see. Liz, which one do you want to find first, x or y?
Y.
Y? Okay, so to find the long leg, given the short leg, it doesn't matter which one you find first. When you have the short leg, you can get to either one. Okay? So how do we find the long leg, Liz, given the short leg? What do we need to do? Very good. Multiply by the square root of 3. Okay, so I'm going to take 9 and multiply by the square root of 3. You can't really do anything with that. You're just going to get 9 times the square root of 3. Somebody brought up first period that they really want to reduce that, and I know it looks like it should reduce, but if the 9 were inside the square root, it would be a different ballgame. But the 9 is not inside the square root, it's outside the square root. Okay, so the y value is going to be 9 times the square root of 3. Done. Now how do I find the hypotenuse? Caitlin, what do you think? How do I find the hypotenuse? Well, you have the short leg is 9. How do you find the hypotenuse if you have the short leg? Times it by 2. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Oh boy. Okay. Times it by 2. So we're going to take 9 and we're going to multiply it by 2 to get 18. That's going to be my x value. Now, what questions do you have? Do you have questions so far? All right. Let's take a look at this last example. Tyler, you doing okay? All right. Let's take a look at this next one. So here I'm given 8. All right. 8 is what on this triangle? Is it the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse, because it's across from the right angle. Okay? So y and x are going to be my legs. Which one's which? Which one's the short leg and which one's the long leg? The short leg is x. Very good. Okay, because that one's across from the 30 degrees. It also looks like it's the shortest. Okay, and then y would equal the long leg. So we have 8. So we have the hypotenuse. Wait a minute. The hypotenuse, the only one that I can get to is the short leg. Well, yeah, that's because everything else depends on the short leg. Remember I said that a minute ago. You want to find the short leg first. We don't have the short leg right here. That's a problem. Okay, so we really want to find the short leg. So the hypotenuse, how do we get from the hypotenuse to the short leg? What do we need to do to get from the hypotenuse to the short leg? Yeah, Rachel. Divide by 2. Very good. So we're going to divide by 2. We're going to take 8 and divide by 2 and get 4. So 4 is my short leg, which is x. Now I want to find the long leg. Okay? So I now have the short leg and the hypotenuse. Which one gives me a direct path to the long leg? The short leg. So I'm going to take that short leg that I just found. Here's where this example is different. Okay, you're working with something you had to calculate. So if you made a mistake, it's going to transfer, but you can't really do a whole lot other than that. Okay, so at least not anything easier. So 4 is the measure of the short leg. How do you get from the short leg to the long leg? What do you need to do? Okay, we're going to multiply by the square root of 3. Okay? Multiply by the square root of 3. So I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to multiply by the square root of 3. Careful, you don't get the square root of 12 from that. 4 is not under its own square root. You're going to get 4 times the square root of 3. Okay, that's your y value. Does that make sense? All right. Questions so far? All right. I'm going to scroll down. Clear with a button. Oh wait, you can't. Yes, tablet. No, the board's not one big tablet. Okay. Let's try these. Now here, this is still a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. That's very important to pick out first. Okay. On your quiz tomorrow, you'll probably have 30, 60, 90s and 45, 45, 90s kind of all mixed together. So you're probably going to want to make sure you know whether it's a 30, 60, 90 or 45, 45, 90. 45, 45, 90 has square root of 2. 30, 60, 90 has square root of 3. We talk in pre-calc about ways to try to help you remember that. Okay, and we talk about more of why they are the way they are too. However, the square root of 3, 3, 6, and 9, square root of 3. Okay, the only tricky part is that it still involves a 2 also. It's just not a square root of 2. They are different. All right, let's try these. So here you have 6. Is 6 the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? Long leg. Okay, so 6 is the long leg. Therefore, I need to find what else I can figure out from the long leg. What can I get to? The short leg. The long leg will take you to the short leg if you do what? Divide by the square root of 3. Okay? So, The long leg is 6. I need to divide by the square root of 3. Anybody see an issue with that? Yeah, what's wrong with it? Can't have a square root in the denominator. All right, so how do we get rid of the square root of 3 in the denominator? Good. Multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3. Okay, when you do that, you're going to get 6 times the square root of 3 over, what's the square root of 3 times the square root of 3? 3. Okay, so 6 times the square root of 3 over 3. What can I do? They do. Not the square root of 3 and 3, the 6 and the 3, because they're both outside the square roots. So that becomes 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom. So it's 2 times the square root of 3. Okay, now what variable did we just find? X or Y? X. Very good, because that's the short leg. It's the one across from the 30-degree angle. So that's equal to X. Now let's find Y. Okay, Y is the hypotenuse in our triangle. All right, so how do we find the hypotenuse in our triangle? Multiply what by 2? The short leg. You have to start with the short leg. Okay, so you're going to take the short leg, you're going to multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. So we're going to take that 2 square roots of 3, and we're going to multiply it by 2. Now be careful, 2 is outside of a square root, so it can multiply by what else is outside the square root? Okay, so what do you get when you do that multiplication? 4 times the square root of 3. And that's your Y value. All right, how about that over there? So you have 5X and Y. 5 is there. 5 is what on our picture? Is it the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? Long leg? How do you know? How do you know that's the long leg, not the short leg? It's across from the 60-degree angle. Okay, there's your 60-degree angle, marked for you on the triangle. 5, therefore, is the long leg. So I can only go from the long leg to the short leg. So let's try this. The long leg to get to the short leg, what do I need to do? Divide by the square root of 3. So we're going to divide by the square root of 3. 5 divided by the square root of 3. How do I simplify that?
Erasing it.
Yeah, right. Right. Multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3. Very good. Okay. So that gives me 5 times the square root of 3 over what? What do you get in the bottom? 3. Very good. What'd you just find, X or Y? X. X is the short leg. All right, that one's definitely shorter than this one. And it's also across from the 30-degree angle up there. So that is X. We need to find Y. All right. How do we find Y? Y is the hypotenuse. So how am I going to find the hypotenuse? Take the short leg and multiply it by 2. Okay, so we're going to take that short leg and multiply by 2 to get to the hypotenuse. So 5 square roots of 3 over 3 times 2. Now, this is where people can get a little confused with some algebra. 2 is the same thing as 2 over 1. Are you lost?
Oh,
Okay.
no. 10 square root of 3.
Ah, very good. 10 square root of 3 over 3. Can 10 and 3 reduce at all? Can I reduce my square root of 3 and my 3 at all? Why not? Very good, because one's a square root and one's not. Okay, so this is equal to y. Nice work. So it's a little more difficult when you're given the long leg because you're going to start involving a square root of 3 in the denominator that you have to fix. Okay? Any questions on those? All right, for this last example, you're given a rectangle, and that rectangle has 10 on the diagonal. All right? So I'm going to trace out the triangle. We're given y, x, 10, and that's 30 degrees up there that finishes out the rectangle. Do we have a 45, 45, 90 right triangle? We have a 30, 60, 90. How do you know we have a 30, 60, 90 right triangle? Can you walk me through some of the reasoning for that? Yeah. 30 over here? Yeah. Hey, what kind of lines are these? Parallel. And alternate interior angles in parallel lines are congruent. So therefore, this is 30 degrees here. They're parallel because it's a rectangle. Okay? And then this up here is, that's one perfect set of reasoning right there. You could also know that this is a right angle because it's a rectangle. The corner has to be a full right angle. And if that's 30 degrees, there's 60 degrees left for the rest of that complement. Okay, so this is a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. Our side lengths are as easy as 1, 2, square root of 3. So we need to figure some things out. We're given 10 as a side length. 10 is what? The hypotenuse, the short leg, or the long leg? The hypotenuse. 121. I'll finish this real quick, all right? You guys can go because it'll be on the notes. So you're given the hypotenuse. To get from the hypotenuse to the short leg, I'll wait until people are done walking. To get from the hypotenuse to the short leg, you need to divide by 2. So I'm going to take 10 and divide by 2 to get 5. That's my short leg, which is also x on my picture. All right. Then I need to find the long leg. The long leg, I need to find with the short leg multiplied by the square root of 3. Okay, so you're going to take 5 and multiply by the square root of 3 to get 5 times the square root of 3 for the long leg, which is y. And that's done. Okay? Don't forget you have a quiz tomorrow.